Hey, welcome to Next Level Method Podcast. I'm Richard Ryerson.
And I'm Matt Lilly.
And we're here to help you take your life to the next level. Let's get started. Jessica Zweig's on the show. That was fun. I really enjoyed talking with her.
She's awesome. Loved her. She, full of energy, totally in alignment with what we're doing with the podcast, with the company. So, no, I just thought she was an incredible, just human being, but love her book called Be. And just the things she talks about, empowering people, empowering women a lot, but also just empowering people. And then she's just so transparent and authentic with her own story. That's what I loved about it, right? It was just kind of like,
Absolutely.
Hey, been here, here's what happened. It got really, really bad. And kind of, here's how I came out of that. And now it's just really fired up to help others. So I love that conversation.
I agreed. And we've talked about authenticity, being your authentic self, transparency, vulnerability. We talk all those things that I know that you and I are both passionate about. And yeah, it was just a really fun conversation. Her book is Be, and she's you're just going to love this conversation.
Yep.
She definitely fits into the Next Level Method tribe.
Yep, definitely.
And probably one of the most aligned guests I've seen with what we're trying to do here,
I
think.
I agree. I agree. She's definitely in the space, and hopefully we'll see her in the future on the show and maybe working with our community as a contributor. So really, really cool lady.
So enjoy this conversation, folks. I think it's one of the better ones we've had, to be quite honest. And go check out nextlevelmethod.com to learn more, everything that we're going on, live events, hopefully coming to a city near you. Please download our app at your favorite app store and get connected with our community. And again, if you would, please follow us on your favorite podcast application. That does wonders. And if you're finding value in this show, please write a review. Let us know. Hopefully it's 5 stars. That does wonders to keep us front and center in this growing sea of podcasts. So again, let's get on with this great conversation with Jessica Zweig here on Next Level Method. Jessica, so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. I love this whole idea of authenticity. Matt's heard me say this probably like a broken record, but I do think the 3 currencies that we're kind of deficient, or I think that unlock so many things, are authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability. And it sounds like that's something that you've embraced. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think I've more than embraced it. I think I live it. I teach it. I preach it. I study it. It's my whole life's work, to be frank.
How did you get there? Because I'm sure everybody kind of has a splat moment that kind of woke them up to this. At least I did anyway. For the power of authenticity, of transparency, vulnerability, right? What got you to this point?
I mean, I think you can only speak to, a topic of like passion and insight if you've been kind of on the opposite side of that, right? Like I often say, we're here, right? Like we're here to teach what we're ultimately here to learn ourselves. So I can only talk about authenticity and preach about it, if you will, because I know what it's like to have lived so inauthentically.
Right.
Yes, yeah. I was like, my own story started firing off in my head. I was like, oh yeah, I remember how that is.
I got a couple T-shirts around that.
Right. Yeah. Did the ride, bought the ticket.
Right. Like the war wounds and the T-shirts, come in tandem. But no, I mean, what really led me here, obviously, I run a personal branding agency. I'm an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, and my whole message platform, teaching services book is all about authenticity. But if you were to flash back about, 7 years ago, I was a very different person and running a very different type of business, living a very different type of life. And it was a fun chapter of my life. I used to run a magazine. I was an online, lifestyle magazine for women. We covered the city of Chicago. It was all about fashion and fitness and nightlife, restaurants. It was quite dope. In fact, I had like an amazing run. Was out and about partying, hosting the parties, attending the parties, building this massive community of millennial women. So this was like the first, back half of my career. Ran this magazine for 7 years, and it became sort of this very well-known. It was in fact the most well-known online brand for women in Chicago, major market for a long time. And I started that from scratch, So it was my first kind of go run at entrepreneurship, made a ton of my mistakes, learned all the lessons. But in hindsight, now I can see, I was really operating from a place of ego, I wasn't cool in high school, wasn't really the girl that the boys liked or the girls wanted to be friends with. And all of a sudden in my, late 20s, here I was like this cool girl in Chicago that everyone wanted to invite to their parties. And you could imagine how validating that was for me at that chapter of my life. Had a lot of unconsciousness around that. The long story short of it is I really started to operate from a very unhealthy place. I had a lot of unhealthy habits. I was partying. I was, just not treating my body well. I was in a toxic relationship with my then business partner. I was lonely. I didn't have a boyfriend, was outsourcing all of my validation on the wrong men. Like there was just a lot of, I was just out of alignment. And after a certain run, and I also forgot to mention I was financially broke. So I had no money. My self-esteem was in the dumps, and, I wasn't really happy. And yet what everyone sort of saw on the outside in was this really successful, sparkly looking girl who was running a really sparkly looking business that everybody, wanted to touch. And I couldn't reconcile that anymore. It caught up with me, and I ended up hitting a pretty severe rock bottom when I went broke and wasn't talking to my business partner, was physically sick from all of the drinking and the partying and the poor sleep. I contracted an autoimmune disease. Like, it was bad. And so I had no choice to stop and really look at my life and the mess I had kind of created unconsciously. And it was really that inflection point, which was about 9 years ago now, that really sent me on this deep spiritual path to take this journey within and to start really owning and claiming my responsibility in all of it, which, not a lot of people talk about, like when it comes to personal growth. Like, we find the light, great, but really it's about looking at the dark that we have, that has manifested within us, and owning it and saying, I co-created this. This didn't happen to me. This happened by me in many ways. And so that journey really caused me to change my life. I left that business. I stopped drinking. I started meditating. I cleaned up my finances. And then I started a second business, which I can talk about, but it was at that inflection point that I started sharing the true story of what I was really going through out loud and online and in conversations. And that's really when I saw the power of this thing called vulnerability, transparency, authenticity come to life in my own career. And it just really, it set me on this path, not only to self-serve myself for my own kind of next chapter, but the impact that I saw it making on other people. And this sort of call to service really came alive in me. And that has been sort of the path that I have been on ever since. And when we align ourselves to service in true connection to like what we're here to give versus what we're here to get, that's when we find our purpose, right?
Yep.
And that's the long answer to the why those things matter to me so much.
Well, I love that. I mean, that's what we call a splat moment, right? And
you call it splat.
I like
moment.
it.
I call it a splat moment.
That's Richard's vernacular. Yeah, but I agree. Yes, definitely. There's that.
We all have something like that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And mine actually is very similar to yours. I'm older than you are, but I
I don't know about that. I'm older than I look.
I am older than I hopefully look.
That's 67. But
I am
pretty good. Look,
67. Yeah, exactly.
No.
But yeah, I do have a similar story, and I already told you in pre-roll that you should just move here and hang out with us, because I'm like, wow. As you're talking, I'm just like, everything that Richard and I talk about, everything we talk about on the podcast, everything we talk about in our project is all like, you just summed it up more beautifully than we do usually. And you've just summed it up, and it's just like, I'm just like, it's kind of, I don't know. I just had, as you're talking and I'm listening to you talk, it was just like, I was like, it's cool when you find your people. Yeah. Right. It's cool when you kind of, I've never met you before, and I've been reviewing some of your stuff before the show, but I'm just like, it's just cool when you're with you. It's like, there's this sense of just kind of like, I don't know, kind of gratitude, I guess, is what's coming up in me. They're like this gratitude or this grace or this sense of just like, Thank you, Lord, for showing me somebody else who's in the space of grace and the space of wanting to pay it forward and service. And I think, the people that have the most drive to do that are usually the ones, I'll use Richard's word, that have the heaviest splats, or sometimes the biggest splats, right? I mean, it's kind of like you find somebody that's doing something in the space of helping, empowering other people. And I guarantee you, they got their ass kicked big time at some point in their life, right? I mean, at some point it was just
Absolutely.
And when you're talking about the partying and the hanging out, and I wasn't as cool as you were, but I got pretty good at all that stuff. I got it down to a science, I think, right? It's like, well, you can sleep this long and you can drink this much, and right? I mean, and you work this, and you work really hard. And so, yeah, I totally resonate with your story of just wanting to help others because of the pain. It sounds like, and you didn't say the word pain specifically, but because of the pain you endured, you want to make sure that others know that if they're suffering that or experiencing that doesn't have to be the end of it, right? That's the bottom doesn't have to stay. You don't have to stay at the bottom.
Yes, I think that's what we all are just ultimately sort of yearning. Is like, we're not alone.
Right.
Yes, our experiences are unique.
Yes.
But because we're all human beings, despite title, status, money in the bank, age, race, gender, sex, sexuality, like, we're all just human beings having a human experience. And when we open up about that, it just creates so much healing. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that in our own respective modalities with our own respective geniuses, like, that's the world I'm trying to co-create, right?
Yes.
Is that world. So I love that.
How do we do air hugs? How do we do air hugs to the, I'll give you like the air hug.
I agree.
We're doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I felt it. I felt the air hug.
Well, I love how you said too that, and I know all of us, I know Matt and I have talked about this, but the moment that we started, even after you have what I call these splat moments, and you mentioned when you finally do share it with somebody with this kind of confidence, with this no holds barred, opening the kimono and showing everybody this is who I am. And it's scary to do, scary as hell the first time you do it. But wow, I call it the melt. Like sometimes when I've seen it, in fact, this Friday, a buddy of mine called, I went to high school with him. He kind of posted this really long rant on Facebook. And I'm like, oh man, he's hurting, something's going on. And I just reached out to him. I said, hey man, you want to get a drink tonight? He said, yes. And so I went and I met him and we started talking, and he was kind of skirting the issues on this and that. And I could tell, like, he wasn't telling me, and I wasn't forcing, I'm just here to listen. And then I found the moment, and I shared with him what happened to me over the last 13 years, kind of my splat moment. And I revealed everything, and every time I do it and I reveal it and I see this person when they're talking and they're kind of the body language, I call it the melt. Because when they're talking to me first, their kind of chest is up like this. And then when I start telling the story about what I'm doing, and I'm just telling them, I'm talking to you guys like right now, and I see them start to do this.
Right.
And they start to melt in their chair.
Yeah, right.
And then when I told him, he goes, thank you for telling me that. And then he started, he just vomited everything, and told me everything. And I was just like, let it out, man. Just tell me. I said, you're a good, at the end of the day, I said, the bottom line is you're a good man, And he just needed to hear that he was a good man, because he didn't feel like he was a good man, Right. And again, and I don't tell that story like, look, I saved the day. Right. That's not what I meant. But it's just that I bared my soul to him. And it kind of like, wow. Right. And every time I've done that, where I've been vulnerable, then you're off to the races.
I mean, this is the world we're all trying to co-create, right? Like I have this book that just came out, and the first chapter of my book, I don't know if I can swear on your show.
Sure you can.
But
okay, go for it. I already opened the door because I kind of felt that rebel vibe from you in the very beginning. I was like, I'm going to throw out a swear word so that she feels free to fly your rebel flag however you want.
I mean, that's me being authentic. That's my brand. So
right, you be you, right?
I swear often from time to time. But my book has, it's called a No Bullshit Guide to Increasing Your Self-Worth and Net Worth.
Yes.
But the first chapter of my book, back to what you were saying, is called Embrace Your Shit. Like that's chapter 1 of my book. And it's just to set the stage, like, because I talk about this thing called personal branding, which is usually associated with this idea of ego and vanity and image, right? But what I'm here to do with my work is to just really debunk that, right? And to say, like, we're all the same. And I love this metaphor of like melting, right? Because when when we go into most situations, we have that armor on. We keep it surface level. We don't share the truth. And I think, I say in that chapter, like, why does it feel so effortless to like have conversations with your best friend or your mom? Because you don't have any armor on. You're just being who you are. And yet, how exhausting is small talk? Like when you're meeting a stranger, it's like that stuff just gets us nowhere. And so if we're really able to get real quicker and go deeper quicker, and realize, hey, we all have shit. Like, and if we wore it a little bit more on our sleeves, not in a way to be self-indulgent or for validation or to be cathartic for the purposes of emoting, but to really just relate on a real human level. Like, think about the power of relationships and connection that we're able to then have with anyone, from a prospective client to an online community member to a new friend to our partner. You mentioned opening up the kimono. I love that metaphor. I use it often with my husband in therapy. It's like, let's really like just share the truth. And like when we do that in any capacity, like it doesn't have to be deep and sad and negative. It can be beautiful and positive, in fact, but real. And when we do that, it's a totally different energy. And I just think we've been conditioned to be afraid of that energy, or think that like we're going to somehow get dinged if we do. And I think that on the most conscious and unconscious levels, we're all just craving that feeling of melting, of walking in and being able to melt. I love it.
And as you're saying that, for me, that it comes up like, I think we're all craving just to be free to be me, right? I just want to be free to be who I am at my essence and my core, and know that I'm going to be loved for all of the beautiful things I am and all the things that I think are ugly about myself, right? I mean, totally. I think we all have that. I think that's a primal instinct, right? I want to feel safe to be who I am and be accepted for who I am, and just be me. Right? I mean, it's growing up, my mom used to say, well, Matt, just be you. And I'm just like, I don't know who I am. I'm still trying to figure out. I'm still like, who the hell am I? I'm still trying to figure out. We're going to cuss on today's show. We don't cuss on a lot of shows. So today is the day of cussing because we're quoting from your book. Right?
Yes,
if we say a quote, then technically we don't have to bleep it out, I don't think.
Exactly.
I'm curious what both of you think, because Matt, I think you may have heard me say this before, but I do think a lot of this, what got me going down this path is, and why we're that way. It seems like it's the natural default human condition to kind of be this armor.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know if that's genetic or environmental or whatever, probably a combination of both. But it's the big lie, right? You've heard me talk about that. I think the big lie that kind of gets us to this armored state is that we base our self-worth on what we accomplish and what other people think of us. And that's that just describes almost the entire human race, right? Like my self-worth, I get my validation based on things I've accomplished and what other people think of me. And if that's what bases my self-worth, then we do the things like you do. We start these really cool magazines and we go to these parties and we do all these things and we get in these the wrong relationships, all that stuff, because we're trying to do something that we think we're supposed to be doing instead of authentically being drawn to who we really are, right? Does that make sense? The big lie, right? We get the self-worth based on what we accomplish and what other people think of us. And then the next part of it, then how do we increase our self-worth? So that's really my long-winded question for you. It's like, how do we get to us? How do we feed our self-worth if it's not about accomplishing things and what other people think of us?
Well, I wrote a whole book about this, so I should be able to answer this question.
We like to try to throw we like to kind of give you segues, right? We like to try to make it easy for the guest.
Thanks, guys.
We actually do our homework. Richard's pretty methodical with studying people.
I love it. Well, we were just talking about this before the show. Yeah. Like, I think that, we to really feel the sense of self-worth, right, is a practice.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's not a destination. But the more we take that journey called life and we risk and we make mistakes and we try on the wrong things and the wrong people and the wrong jobs, like, we can then start to build that muscle of like, oh, okay, this is not in alignment with who I am. We start to know who we are and what our own standards are for ourselves. And I've been seeing this lately, just more and more with people. I mean, we outsource that worth. Like you were just saying, it's like we need the validation, the recognition, the awards, the check, the client, like. And when we really just become conscious of that we're really doing that, like it's just a practice of why did this person, for example, when I launched my book, which was a few months ago, and it was a big success, but it was also very challenging. Like launching a book is incredibly vulnerable. You're asking the whole world to show up for you.
Right. People
you know really well to people you don't know at all, and asking people to help you promote this thing you created. And when you sort of outsource the worthiness of yourself and your life's work and your book, your product into someone else's hands, and they say no, or like I don't have time, or whatever it might be, they don't do it the way you wanted them to. It was very jarring. It rocked me in certain moments. It was extremely vulnerable chapter. And now in hindsight, 2020, I can see like they're all wonderful people. It's not their responsibility to validate me. They were busy, whatever. My book is the magic. Like it's worthy of being read by the people who are going to read it. And I don't have much control over that. What I do have control over is the love and the light and the energy and the confidence that I poured into that book. And, so I use it as a metaphor for whatever it is we're creating in the world, and where we're really looking to other people to fill up that cup. And it's really no one's responsibility. That's like kind of the crux of worth. It's like, it's actually an inside job. It's up to me. And the more you go deeper on that journey within versus without, seeking without, but within through, what I consider powerful modalities of therapy and journaling and meditation and coaching, feedback, like those are the containers where we can really unpack our worthiness and lack thereof, perhaps. But just to be conscious of when we deflect it, to Richard's point, of onto other people with the expectation that that's where we get it from. No. And that is a practice. Like I consider myself a pretty confident, worthy person, and then you launch a book or you do something that's vulnerable, and you realize, oh, okay, I still have real work to do here, and that's sort of the beauty of the human experience, is that that's an evolution, a constant evolution.
Right.
We don't ever fully arrive there. I think I've come to embrace that. I don't know if that's right or not, but I guess it's from having these conversations. I've talked to a lot of people who've accomplished a lot of great things, and I've asked bluntly, I said, well, when does this go away? And I get laughed at, and they're like, oh, it never goes away. I go, it's just something I have to deal with, And I just realized that when that voice in my head is telling me, you suck, what are you doing? Or imposter syndrome kind of rears its head, I know that's not me. I just realize that's the ego talking, or that's not my authentic self. That's the resistance or something that's trying to stop me from doing this for whatever reason. I guess I would put too much energy trying to figure out why this happens. I've stopped. To me, that's wasted energy. I just like, it just is, right? I mean, just to your point, Jessica, when you launched your book, you're like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good. And then, the humble God's kind of like, hey, well, not so fast, right? Like you said, you got work to do. But I think that's just always going to be there, right? I don't think that the end result is 100% confident all the time, every day, right? I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's. I mean, I don't. Yeah, Jessica, what's your thoughts on that? Let's ask. Let's ask Jessica.
I just always encourage people to come back to the truth, like the truth that they know, and like I gave that example of my book, right? And like the truth wasn't, oh, these people don't like me and don't have time for me. The truth is my book was beautiful, right? Right. Yesterday I had dinner with one of my employees. She's 26 years old. She's brilliant. She's such a superstar, and she's been really questioning her ability. And she also does life coaching on the side, right? Which I love. She works for my agency, but she's got a side hustle. She just got her life coaching certification. And she tells me this story, and I'm sharing this because I think your audience might relate to this. She shares this Instagram story where she was kind of reflecting on the distinction between why you would need a therapist versus why you would hire a life coach. Okay. And she was trying to be of service. She was sharing value and context for what she does versus what she doesn't do. Well, she got some DM from some follower of hers who is a therapist who just slayed her and was like,
wow,
life coaches are screwing up this industry and you should be very careful of what you're sharing because people need therapy and life coaches are not credited, etc. And she, it really obviously rocked her. And she told me that she has paused on marketing her little life coaching business on Instagram for the last month because she was so rocked by this. And I looked at her and I said, Kara, do you help your clients, the women that you serve? She said, yes. Do you feel like the women that work with you are changed for the better because of you? She said, I do. I said, that's the truth.
Right.
That DM that slid into your inbox, that is someone else's projection, story, insecurity, masks as superiority. That is not the truth. That is not your truth. Your truth is the fact that you know you do great work for your clients who love you. And she had forgotten that. And so I just share that when we talk about this concept of worthiness, we think we're going to find it in someone else's story.
Right.
And it's right in front of us. Like the truth of who we are. That's where we find the truth of the goodness that we put out into the world. That's where we find our worth.
That's such a great example.
Yes, it's and I think that's a great example and something that I think we all run into, right? Is kind of that. And we talk about the hero's journey a lot at Next Level Method and Joseph Campbell's work around the hero's journey. But it's like in the movies, then I've used this example like the Neo where he goes to the Oracle and she says, "You're not the one." Right. And so, because he was like thinking he was the one and had all this pressure. She's like, "You're not the one." And he obviously in the movie, The Matrix, he ends up being the one, but he needed to embrace it himself. Right. As you've been saying, Jessica, it's an inside job. And so in everyone, and Richard and I actually do a segment that we are making free to people on the hero's journey, because it's like, once I saw the hero's journey, I was like, wow, so this is why I was dying here. And I was, all the questioning and all that. I was like, well, that's part of the cycle of life. That's part of and it's a never ending cycle, right? You go through it multiple times during the bigger hero's journey that is life. But, until you know internally that you're on the right path and it's your choice and kind of you're leaning into your purpose, right? It doesn't, no amount of validation, no amount of external validation really matters, because I know, at least in my life, I was getting tons of external validation, earlier in my life, and I just kept feeling more and more empty, right? It was like the more external validation I got, the more empty I felt. It was like, wow, that is not who I am at all, right? It was like, your name in the paper and people say, oh yeah, I know this, or yeah, I know this guy, and you feel like you're known and all this. And in fact, it's a joke between my wife and I now. We go out in Wichita, it's not that big a community, and somebody will come up and say, oh, hi Matt, how you doing? And they'll walk away and she'll be like, how do you, and I'll say, honey, because I'm kind of a big deal, right? So now it's got to be just a running joke where I'll look at her and she goes, I know you're kind of a big deal, but I've just been in the same town for a long time and been in business, right? But early on, it was just all about that external validation. I just felt so unworthy.
Sure.
I came from a small town, came from nothing really, not poverty, but not much higher than that. And it was just this need to be significant, but not through significant contribution, just being significant to be like, okay, I'm for me, I think it was safety, right? Ultimately, I felt afraid because it was like I wasn't significant, so I could die, I could perish, or nobody would love me or whatever. And so I had to build up this persona, this fake character that I thought people would love, but it wasn't love at all. Yes, Jessica?
No, I'm like getting emotional for some reason. I love that you shared that. Like, I think it's so powerful that you shared that, because the need for significance, for us to feel that, is so universal.
Yeah, it is.
Like, there's nothing wrong with the fact that you wanted to feel and want to feel significant,
right?
Which means that you are loved, that you are seen, that you are valued. And like, what a beautiful human yearning that is innate in all of us. And we have sometimes screwed up ways of seeking that, sure. Yes. But I also don't want to villainize ourselves for wanting that in the first place.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I love the word significance. I think that it's something that I know when I had my splat moment, and I know that what led to for me, it was almost a dissolution of a marriage, because I was chasing all those validation things, and I wanted to be, I would give a speech and I would 5 people would tell me how great it was. And that wasn't enough, because the last speech, 15 people told me it was great, and if I got 5, and right. So I was seeking that, and it was just such a hamster wheel. But when, after almost losing the marriage and trying and rebuilding it and all that, and coming back, it was when I got therapy and counseling, and they gave me a book called The Search for Significance. And it was it's not about being successful. It's about searching for significance. And when you ask people, what's the difference between leading a successful life and a significant life? I always gravitate toward the significant answer, because that's where you start getting the real human answers, the things that we all we all want, to be appreciated, to feel like, I don't know what my point was. I think the point was about the word significance. I think that's so powerful. When we're doing this journey to be authentic, I think if you can ask yourself, well, what does it mean to lead and live a significant life? I think that starts, as you point out in your book, your first chapter, owning your shit, right? I mean, I think that's the foundation to start living a significant life.
I agree.
Get completely honest with what you have, and realize that you're not alone. I think that was, for me, the more I opened up and showed the kimono, I realized, there's a lot more people that have feeling and doing and did the things that I've done and am doing, right? And feeling. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I so relate to that, by the way. 5, and then there's 15, and then there's 5. You're like, what's wrong with it? I mean, it really is such a mind fuck. And at the end of the day, it's like, you blessed people, period. And it doesn't matter. And it's just, gosh, I so relate to that.
Yeah.
What do you I'm curious, because a lot of what you talk about in B is in your book. It was
your first book. This is the first book, right? B was your first book.
Yeah, the one.
Right.
This is the one that just came out, right?
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought there was 2. I'm
She's
sorry.
writing another one.
Okay, that's right. You mentioned you were writing another. That's right. Okay,
but
and we're not dropping any. So when you get ready to publish, we want you to come back on the show so we can tease that one.
Great.
All right. So when you're ready, you just let us know. We're here to serve.
Okay.
I'm curious what you think, because a lot of what you talk about here is building your own personal brand, and from a PR standpoint and from a social media standpoint. We've talked about this. I know Matt and I have views of it. I mean, it's here to stay. It's a necessity. I've got kids, obviously. They're adult. 2 of them are adults, and I got 2 and 1 in high school still. And I look at the self-esteem. I got all daughters, and I see how much the social media realm and everything else has kind of really been a battle for all their self-esteem, all 4 of them, right? And it's been positive, but it's been negative too. How do you view this as we're trying to build our signature brand style? You talk about 10 evergreen principles of social media. What is your view on social media so that it's healthy, I guess, is really what I'm going with my question, because there's so much negative content with the Facebook story this week,
Yeah, right.
with the whistleblower coming out in 60 Minutes, how do we keep it in a healthy, positive space, in your opinion?
So I wrote there's a couple chapters in my book about this. So I'll try to be concise, because there's a lot I could say about this. I am older than I look. I'm a dinosaur in the world of social media. I've been on it since 2008. So and I started my business on the merits of Facebook and Twitter in 2008. So I've been on it when it was the wild, wild west, and there wasn't even an Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, none of those things existed. So my principles that I speak to in my book basically point to what worked then works now. And there's going to be constant changes in the algorithms and the apps and the functionality and the bells and whistles. But at the core, this is a place to connect online with other human beings, soul to soul, human to human. It's called social media, and we are social creatures. And when we remember the laws, the principles of relationships, reciprocity, accessibility, fun, integrity, when we stick to the core components of how we relate and just doing it online, that's really when social media starts to work for us. And it becomes, I think it's such an exciting time to be alive. The fact that we have these tools that allow us to connect with other human beings across the planet in a matter of seconds, in a real creative and fun and interesting strategic way. And we have demonized it, and for good reason. We all saw that. I saw that 60 Minutes segment. It's messed up, the darkness the toilet that it has kind of become. But you control your own experience on social media. This goes back to outsourcing our power. If there is somebody online that is sharing content that triggers you, whether it's a political point of view you disagree with, all the way to speaking to your children. I don't know if you have daughters, but I'm a woman. I will see a woman on the internet who is skinnier than me, happier than me, richer than me, having more fun than me, and it's a trigger. And I'm like, okay, I don't need that person in my experience. I will unfollow her, not because I think she's a bad person, but because I don't like it, what it brings forth in me. And so when we really look at this experience on our phone as our own worlds that we create for ourselves to inspire us, educate us, connect us, fuel us, feed us, versus diminish us and take away from our sense of self and happiness and sanity, and most people are unconscious that they can do that. And again, I'm a dinosaur. So I'm like, social media is awesome. Like, it is such a powerful tool to create community and connect, drive business results, and like meet amazing friends, like truly, and there's this saturation, it's noisy. Everyone's online right now. Social media is no longer social media. It is the internet. And so we just have to really have dominion over our own choices and curate our own experiences and have the willpower to cut out what we don't like instead of getting sucked into it. And also being savvy, like what that woman said on 60 Minutes. I just had a friend who got totally duped by Instagram thinking that she was submitting her information to be verified, and it turned out to be, a hacker who took all her information. Like, you got to be savvy in knowing like kind of what's clickbait and what's really trying to get you or information or get you to just stay on the app longer. We have to kind of rise above. But I have a very clearly strong feelings about this. I think that when we really look at social media as a tool to create relationships in a meaningful way, and all of the vanity goes out the window. It doesn't matter how many followers you have, doesn't matter how many likes it gets. Like, it's real people on the other side of their phones. And when you create content and you consume content that is of value and authentic and of service, it changes the game.
Yeah, it goes back to the basics. I love that answer, because it reminds us that, because I think sometimes you hear some of this negativity and you just want to pull the plug and say, well, and we talk about it here, like we got to get around these campfires and see face to face. But then I look at what you talk about, where I've had success with social media. I mean, I wouldn't be here talking with Matt if it wasn't for social media. If I wouldn't,
exactly.
and I look at all of the connections.
Or my dog, or literally my wife, my dog, some of the stuff I have, friends I have, business connections with you. I mean, it came from social media, right? It came from
think about it.
Accessibility. We've got our producer sitting behind the cameras here in the studio came from social media. I was 11 o'clock one night. I'm like, how do I get people to video stuff? I was like, I found him on social media. So yeah, there's some very positive things, but I love what you're saying about that is the power of owning your experience. You get to choose your experience.
Yeah.
Right?
And the will. I love what you said about, we just got to have the willpower, understanding that this is a dopamine rush, and
100%.
And I know, and I catch myself, like, it's easy for me to go down the Twitter slog and start to get in an argument with somebody just because it feels good, and I can feel the dopamine rush of me playing the flag and proving that I'm right. It's not healthy. And then I just, what am I doing?
Did you see the movie The Social Dilemma?
Yeah. It was incredible.
I mean, there's a class at Stanford that they teach their undergrads called Addictive Technology. Like, everything from like when we do a text message, on our iPhones, and then someone's responding and we see the little bubble, the little three little dots. That is called psychology. Like, Apple designed that so that we remained more addicted to texting to the device. And so like Gmail, like having certain ways that our emails alert us we've got new mail, like it causes it. So I agree with you. We're up against a real like psychological epidemic when it comes to what our phones do to us psychologically, and they are very addicting, and you have to have willpower. And I'm addicted to my phone. I will own that as much as anybody.
Too. We all are. Yeah.
But when you open up your phone and you look into your Instagram feed or your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed, I would just really highly encourage people to be incredibly empowered around what they want that to be.
Right.
Because you do get that choice.
Yeah. Because it's your environment. I mean, it's your digital environment. And it's kind of like you wouldn't, in your house, you wouldn't have you wouldn't take those same messages and those same people and set them in your living room and come home every day and go, why are these people in my house, right? Why are they yelling? I don't even believe in what they're talking about. Why are they talking about this? You would do, but yet this is our digital house, right? This is our digital environment. And we've got to be conscious that we got to take out the trash there too, right? We got to clean house. Cause I know I've seen somebody posting something a couple times and I'm just like, that has no value in my life, right? That what they're, they get into victimhood and it's just on and on. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to unfollow that person because I just don't need that. It's like, if it's not adding value in my space, then why am I looking at it, right?
Goes back to the willpower.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that self-awareness, knowing that you're going down that.
F word and amen. We've got a real guest on today. We've got some energy here today.
I love the F word. F word's my favorite word.
Fun, fantastic. Yes, thank you, Ricky.
So who you hope picks up this book? Who are you hoping? Yeah. What is the avatar that you're hoping reaches out to you and picks up this book?
That's such a good question. I mean, I think my book is really for anyone seeking the freedom to be who they truly are, which I think is everybody. Right. So I know that's not like a great marketing answer because right. I did have to market my book specifically to segments. Yes. But, honestly, when I wrote my book proposal, I had to think about that. So, it's for the progressive professional. Mm-hmm. It's people who are, ambitious, career oriented, but want to make a difference, want to bring more humanity into the way that they show up and to the way they're building their companies and their products and their, programs and services. Like people who are showing up differently today in work. That is 1,000% who it's for. It's for people who are looking to build their personal brands, like professionally minded people. I really had in my heart of hearts when I was writing the book that it was for young women. Mm-hmm. I'll reveal my age. I'm 40. I just turned 43 months ago.
Dang it. I wanted to wager you. I was hoping you weren't going to do that. I was going to throw in at the end. Let's wager for something. Somebody has to buy dinner in the city that they live. Right?
It's kind of crazy. Like I feel like I've gotten younger as I've gotten older. And I think it's just because I've become happier and more authentic. Right. But, for a long time, in my 20s and even in my early 30s, like I was searching, I didn't have this sense of confidence. I didn't have this sense of worth and how truly unstoppable, like how sooner could I have really started and how happier and lighter could I have felt? And I just see so many young women struggling with this sense of worthiness and being who they are and feeling like they have no permission to be who they are. And so my book is like that permission slip, and it's really given people, and I felt it from a lot of women, like the gift of that deep breath of like, oh, like who I am versus what I do equally has value. And for me to share that truly is a superpower versus a detriment. And so that book is really for everyone. But I think at the core, I've loved seeing the transformation and the feedback and the messages that I'm getting from all sorts of people that have told me that it's changing their lives. And, it's who it's for, maybe myself about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I like that. Well, that's a good way to write a book or even create content, is who's your audience. And a lot of times I go, well, it's me. It's like the guy I was 10 years ago or you know what I mean? I think that's a great answer. I love this. I do have 4 daughters and my youngest is a junior in high school. And it's just particularly with 4 girls, high school girls are so mean, if I can just say that. They're like the meanest people on the planet, I think, sometimes. Just horrible, if I can say that.
You can say it.
I have trauma from that period of my life. Yeah. Like, it's real. They're the worst. And that stuff stays with you, It can, unless you work it out. And, I really empathize with your daughter because they're coming up in a different time now with social media. Like, the the world is opened in a way that wasn't when I was growing up. I didn't get a cell phone until my senior year of college.
Right.
So, and it wasn't even a smartphone.
No.
Just called people. Right. So I'm here for it. That's what my next book's going to be for, your daughters.
Yeah.
Love it.
Real.
She came and she's pretty confident and she's my go-getter. When she came on and she's on the cheerleading squad and seemed like a typical high school, and then just the circle of the drama and the friend, she came on and she's just bawling, and she compartmentalized and she was bawling to us. I was like, I don't understand. And these friends dramas, I'm just, you're sitting there as an outsider looking in going, and you're realizing that these girls who are being kind of mean to her at the moment, it's all coming from this lack of their own self-esteem issues,
right.
self-worth issues.
Self-esteem,
and
sure.
I'm like, hurt people hurt other people, and
right.
like, remember
right.
and try to, so exhausting. I'm going to give my daughter this book.
So
you should.
So
I'm going to.
And just for clarity, and for our listeners and for us, so you've got the book, you've got you have an agency to help companies and entrepreneurs and people similar to yourself, it sounds like, get out their message, authenticity, and things like that. Are there other things that you're doing that I know you have a podcast, right?
I do. I have a podcast. It's called the SimplyBe Podcast.
Okay.
And I talk to a lot of amazing entrepreneurs, New York Times bestsellers, thought leaders. And we really click into this concept of building a personal brand rooted in authenticity and service. And it's been a fun ride. I also have a couple online programs that I run that are, more accessible.
Right.
Working with me at my agency is, one-to-one, white glove, high touch, full service, brand identity, strategy, and brand management. Not everybody can afford an agency. So I created a handful of programs that are far more affordable online for you to self-study through webinars, videos, kind of a deeper click into the book, all taught by me. And I have a workbook coming out next year for the book B. So if you want to do like a pull out and really go deeper and expand upon the exercises. So I got a bunch of projects going on. I will say, just since you asked, like, I think one of my favorite things I get to do is be a leader. I have a staff of 22 people. And I started it less than 5 years ago with just me. So it's been like this really cool adventure, learning how to be a true, CEO and building a company. And someone once said to me, your business is only as good as your people. It actually becomes less and less about you the bigger you become, as you guys know.
Sure.
And so building my team and my agency has been just my favorite part about what I do.
Oh, so you're opening up a can of worms here for the leadership stuff. Now I've got to hold a bunch of other questions that we don't have time for.
I know. Well, that's why we always. That's why.
Bring me back.
I was gonna say we invite back the ones we love the most, and we love Jessica. So we would love to have you back. I feel honored that you came on the show, and you can come back on anytime that you want to talk. And we typically say, sooner than later. Let's not wait a year to do this. Let's do it, 3 or 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever works for you. I love your message. I love what you're doing in the world, and we want to help kind of fan those flames and help shine your light even brighter, right? That's what we're about. Is let's support you and your message. You've got a great message and an earned degree from life to be able to teach what you teach. Right?
You got what I call life stink. I like it when people have life stink on them. I always
work on your vernacular. You and I are going to work on terms later after the show.
Stuff, like splat.
Yeah, that's true.
Splat.
Yeah. I forgot the old Marines coming out.
That's right.
We got swearing. We've got weird words from Richard today. It's just a good show. Yeah. It's just a good show.
Well, Jessica, how can people? We touched on it, but how can people connect with you, reach out to you, and learn more about you?
When it comes to social media, I spend a lot of time on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn. Those are like my 2 channels. You can buy my book. It's called Be a No Bullshit Guide to Increasing Your Self-Worth and Net Worth by Simply Being Yourself. And it's on Amazon, but you can support your local bookstores too. And you can come find me at SimplyBeAgency.com to learn about my business.
Sweet.
I love it. We'll have links to all that in the show notes. Jessica, thanks for coming on the show. We're so excited to be connected with you, and hopefully this is the beginning of a connection that'll last a long time.
You guys are amazing. I love having friends now in Wichita. So thank you for having me on your show.
Thanks for coming on. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Next Level Method podcast. If you found some value in this, tell somebody about the show. Tell your friends, tell your spouse, tell your kids, let them know all about Next Level Method. And go to nextlevelmethod.com to learn more and join our community. Thanks for tuning in.